It's happening! Contrast paints are here!
Spiky bits.
Welcome back, Hobby Maniacs. I'm Baer from SpikyBits.com, and we got the contrast paints. So here's the thing. There's a lot of videos out there. We're not going to dive into the reaction video and the this and the that and the experimentation with this and that. I'm just going to use these on a model or a set of models that I'm probably going to use them on anyways because it seems like really easy to do for what I want to do with them. But in case, it's later on in the release cycle and you haven't seen any of those videos because you're just getting into the hobby and you've come to our channel, well, I'm going to give you a little bit of introduction onto Citadel Contrast real quick. So each one of these pots is $7.80. You get 18 milliliters in the pot. And well, they are very liquidy for the most part. Now, so one thing I did notice that on some of the colors, you're just going to want to be careful and give them a good shaky, because it looks like the medium has separated to the bottom of them. I keep a little buster brush around so that I can clean out my airbrush. So this would probably come in handy right here as well, and just mix that up, because no matter how hard I shake, this doesn't seem to really want to do anything there. It just barely scratched the surface, and you know what? I have better things to do than just shake this thing all day. So there is that. Now, something else I noticed too, that as we're jumping into the actual tutorial on these particular miniatures, is that there's a little bit difference in the spray, and we'll get to that here in a second. So there's 34 of these colors, 34 of these bad boys. They're $7.80 each. You don't have to buy every single one of them if you don't want to, but you can. The technical contrast medium is also $7.80. This is a taller pot. This is 24 milliliters here, so you can get a lot more in this. And in case you haven't seen the memes already, you're probably going to want to invest in some sort of hobby pot holder. This is a widget that you can print out from, I think, Thingiverse. If you don't have a 3D printer, GameMV, the makers of the hobby holder, have one of these that you can actually buy from them as a product in ABS plastic, so it's a little bit more durable. This is just 3D print, so at some point I will break this, although I've decanted all of my Citadel paints by this point, so I never thought I'd have to use this again, but here we are, contrast. So I have that just in case, because by putting the paint into this, you have very little chance of it actually spilling over and wasting your $8 that you spent. And then rounding up the release itself is the little primer pots, which are $4.55. These are meant to give you a brush on base coat that is conducive to the Citadel color contrast system. And then you have the two sprays. Well, actually, there's three. There's the Corax White, which really is the same. It's just a rebranding that says Contrast Undercoat on it. So you've got Wraithbone and Gray Seer. Now, going into the tutorial now real quick, we're segueing. I was going to use the Wraithbone because it looks like on most of the previews that the Wraithbone is a brighter, more popular color, where the Gray Seer is more like a uniform gray from Army Painter, kind of muted, and I'm all about that poppy style. And I mean, with something called contrast, why the heck not? Initially, I was wondering, I was like, okay, cool. Well, the hobbyist in me wants to know, hey, do I need to spend 20 bucks on this new spray paint? It's $19.80. And I'm like, well, maybe not, because it says bone, so why don't I just grab my Army Painter Skeleton Bone Primer? And is there really that much of a difference between the two? Because this is, I think, $12 to $15. Now, truth be told, Army Painter is one of our sponsors, but it seems how it's pretty much the only available color primer out there in a bone tint. I was probably going to grab this anyway, so let's just be honest there. So I primed up two of our Sylvaneth or Revenant Duders here in each one. The one in my right hand is the Wraithbone. The one in my left hand is the Skeleton Bone from Army Painter. Yep, they are 100% different. This is more pastel-y and a little bit more towards the grayscale, where this one is a very uniform kind of Xandri dust type bone to compare it to the Citadel colors. Now, I just hit it all the way 360 around, so the underneath are a little bit still that gray plastic, which in theory should be okay for contrast because it's supposedly a thicker kind of paint, so it should grab to it and not just slide off like a wash. So I'm hoping that that gives us a little bit of free depth and free contrast, if you will, to the colors themselves. So what I'm going to do now is take a few minutes and play around with the actual paint, get my color palette together. I think I'm going to use about 7 to 8 of these and paint this one up on the left just to kind of understand how the paint works and have a little bit of a control to talk to you conversationally about as I put the different layers on here and show you some things I noticed painting this one here. So it's kind of a paint as I go / record, but that way we all kind of learn together and get a few ideas and tips, lessons learned, so to speak, on this system, because let's face it, it isn't a cheap system, but if the time savings is there, you can make the argument that perhaps that is worth it to you, depending on what hobbyist you are. So with my initial learning complete, I'm going to start on the one we sprayed up with Wraith Bone. So my first color is going to be Aggros Dunes, which is right here. I've got it loaded up in the widget. And we put a little on our palette right here along with some of the mixing medium. So I probably won't show you this much, but if we're gonna cut it, we're gonna cut it 50% with some mixing medium right here and to kind of get it down. And then we're just gonna coat the biggest parts here, which is the majority of the wood. And that was cut too much, so let's go straight and see where we're at. And that's pretty good. So we're just gonna get in there and just get a nice even base coat across all the areas that we want to hit. Not one big thick coat, but we're just trying to make sure we get a nice even consistency all the way across. Okay, with that all blocked in, nice and neat, or as neat as we can, we will have to do some touch-ups with our base color of the Wraithbone pot here. We are going to switch it up and do the darker brown now around these other areas of wood right here to create contrast on our contrast. So we're going to grab some wildwood, always up to no good. Shake this up a bit, just make sure we got no medium down there. And I'm actually going to spoon some of this out onto our palette here, because you can see it's nice and thick. And we're not really going for that nice thick coat. I know G-Dub says it, but we're just going for a little bit on the palette and just a little bit of medium, just mixing it up just to kind of cut that edge off a little bit. And then we'll go in and continue very carefully to block in our colors. We're just going to do this hand right here and just using our hobby muscles to just make sure that the contrast paint itself is spreading out nice and easy, but also not globbing it on thick, because that will give you that coffee staining that is really bad. So we started there, we'll do the rest of that wood and come on back. So there it is, all the browns are blocked in and it's slowly starting to dry. Now I skipped ahead and used some of the Wraithbone paint to actually go ahead and paint on and cover up where I had accidentally gotten it onto these other areas right here that we're about to paint. So I'm going to grab my green for my skin. We're going to use Warp Lightning right here. And I'm pretty sure that I'm going to want to thin this down. So I'm going to spoon some out right here. Maybe a little bit more. And we're going to do about a 50% mix and see where that gets us, because I can always add more to my paint here in order to get it. So that's about, I'm looking at a glaze consistency, and I have some conclusions already and some kind of how-tos and lessons learned, but you're gonna have to stick around to the end on that, because I want to kind of show you as I go. I don't want to lead you in any way towards anything, but I definitely want to show you how this is gonna go on and kind of apply itself, and then talk about some of the conclusions. So I don't want to give you a false bias or just kind of get you going down another path without seeing how everything's looking. So there is a little bit thin down, and then I'll go more towards the not thin down side of things. And I think that's probably where, that's still not full strength right there, but I'm thinking that that's kind of where I want to be. Now I'm going to try to be as careful as possible here, because I don't care about up here, because this is going to be an actual metal we're going to have to break out. But what I do care about is this hair being yellow. It's going to be a little difficult to deal with if I get green on it. So I'm going to get in there and concentrate and come right back. And here's the end result. It's spread out very, very well, but you can definitely tell a difference right here in this area where I actually brushed on the Wraithbone primer as opposed to the spray right there. Now, I don't know whether that was just a chunky issue or something like that, but it was definitely noticeable. So now, while this is still drying, I'm going to try to save a little bit of time here and go ahead and cut in the metals, which won't need to be undercoated with that Wraithbone, and to get us to the point where we can start on the last two colors. And now that we've got all of our cleanup done, it's time to hit the yellows on the hair. And for this, we're going to use Iandin Yellow. And just like we did with the green right there, we're going to mix up a little color swatch with some, rinse out your brush, of the medium right here. And we're just going to kind of work it all the way through. And we're probably going to live where we worked with the green, like right here. We're probably going to work over in this area on the far right, because what I want to do, or what I'm hoping to do, is get in there and hit that hair and nothing else. So I keep going down a size of brush, hopefully to give me better control over everything that's happening here. So I'm going to grab some of my yellow, and I'm just going to start at the top, because we all know how gravity works, and that's a little too thin. So we're just going to kind of work over, you can see where I just grabbed from, so we're just going to kind of work over towards the middle right here. And it's definitely a little bit more chunkier or gloppier. And now we're just going to get in there and see if that gets us to kind of where we want to be. And not quite yet. And that's what playing around with this really kind of lets us do. So you can see the perfectly strong all the way over to the perfectly light. And now where are we at? So now I think that's where we want to be at. So we're going to pull that down, and we're going to start working it through, getting in all the cracks, and hopefully not getting on anything else. Pretty simple enough, just blocked in the yellows and looking really fresh right there. And then we have two last colors to do. First up is going to be Talisar Blue. This is a very, very poppy blue, and I like this one so far. It's one of my faves already. So we thinned it out on our palette already, so you can kind of see the translation going all the way up. You might notice up here is more Guillemane blue than anything, if you remember that glaze, which technically is now discontinued. And we're going to go ahead and hit the blade right here. So I'm going to work in the middle, because I think that's probably a good place to start. And we're just going to pull all of this down around the blade just like that. And I think that is a beautiful fade, along with all the trimmings. Now I put an extra coat of that Wraithbone all the way down the edge there, and I think that may have helped us, or just, it's just probably separating that much. We'll flip it over and do the same thing over here, and then I'm going to hit some of the details on the model itself that are going to spot color and kind of bring this all together. So I did a little bit of the blue there on some of the tattoo areas that you can see, and used a little bit of the medium to kind of get it to flow into the brown areas, but everything else, it worked just fine right there. And then used a little bit of the flesh tears up there on the buds on the branches. So that's it. We got it done. It looks great. There are obviously some Klingons and some drip drops, but I'm going to put this down, let it finish drying, and collect my thoughts, and come back and talk about this model and give you some of my conclusions for this whole process and or system. Okay, so I got a lot of ideas and things to say about this, but let's talk about the miniature itself and the things that you can see and things that we know from this tutorial. So first off, this whole contrast paint has a very high dry time, which it's gonna lead to some issues because of the inherent nature of the heavily pigmented wash or paint. It's more of a wash, let's be real. It's just kind of sloppy. So you're gonna get it. So you're gonna get it all over, and then you're gonna have to come back and use that Wraithbone to touch things up, and then hit it again, and hopefully if you're very careful you can get, this kind of effect. Like, I didn't have to do multiple colors, and I didn't have to put blue in there, but I feel like this is a really cool looking model because of that. So yeah, I didn't just slather it on one thick coat. I wanted it to look different, and I wanted it to look tabletop or a slightly above tabletop, I feel like, at that point. I was also trying to match a miniature, which I'm going to show you here shortly too. So there's that. So just be aware of that. It's going to be messy. You're going to have to do, you can see up in here where the green got around there. And in order to fix on that brown, in order to fix that, I'd have to come in with a wraith bone, and then I have to wash it again, which might get that on the green and, you know, yada yada, vice versa, and all those things. It's just not worth it to me at that point. Like, I want to, if I go back in to do touch-ups, I want to make sure that's the touch-up. Also, the one on the touching on the one thick coat, you have to be very careful. You have to be looking for your Klingons and your Glip Glops, because you're going to get them regardless of what any video out there says or anything like that. I was very careful, and we still got stuff like this with these yellows and the stuff in here. So you're going to have to kind of go through and dab off areas that might be starting to kind of pool and coffee stain. Granted, this model, there isn't a lot of flat surface, and as you saw right here on the sword, there was no coffee staining, which is great. This is incredible, but had that sword been perfectly flat, I feel like this isn't going to work well on vehicles. I don't have a vehicle here, and I didn't try it on a vehicle, but my gut would tell me, don't waste your time, stupid. Get out your airbrush and do it. So that's what I'm just going to go with. I don't have anything to prove that. That's my gluten-free gut check for that right there. This material, this contrast paint, appears to work better on certain types. So it's going to work good on stuff like this, your Nurgles, your Orcs, your anything organic, Tyranids, Dark Elves, stuff like that. It's going to work great on, but I feel like it'll have a hard time on those flat surfaces. Again, don't have empirical proof of that, and I can't show you that, but I'm just saying it works great here, but I'm not sure about flat surfaces. So, in conclusion, all of that aside, here is the model I was trying to mimic, and we got there pretty good. And as you can see, even using washes back in the day, we still got a little messes on our things here. So, this was using basically washes and a little bit of regular paint and some airbrush effects, and this was using just the contrast paints themselves, which I feel like it's, you know, probably a good substitute for it, but I feel like less time was spent on this one because, except for, you know, the obvious mess up on the hair right there, I feel like less time was spent on this one over here than the one with the contrast because it is so messy. That being said, on larger models, it might work better. You know, you didn't have to worry about dangly hair and all these crazy little horn or branches and things like that. So it's really hard to say. Only have painted this one miniature right here. But I think, you know, comparing the two, they look great. If I had my choice, I would probably go with the one over here that was done with washes. This is just basically Agrax Earthshade, Nuln Oil, the yellow glaze, the green glaze, and a little bit of paint here and there, some blues and such, and then one of the texture paints on the bottom right there. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. More time was definitely spent on this, and we're not even cleaned up in this areas and things up here. So just kind of keep that in mind. I feel like all of these contrast paints are great. They have a purpose, y'all. They are great for things that are less intricate paint job wise than this. If you want to do something like this, I feel like just use your existing processes, use your existing paints. But hey, if you want some really poppy green glazes, you want some really poppy blue glazes, these are basically glazes. I showed you here how we thinned them out using the medium, and you basically can make glazes of any one of these 34 colors to use on your models, essentially. And they're all very nice, and for the most part they're all pretty poppy. Some of them are a little bit duller than others. You know, this looks dull, but it's good right there. And you saw some of the darker colors that we used right here, so we got a really nice sampling of these colors. And there's the Flesh Terrors red that I used just straight out of the pot onto the buds right there at the end of the branches. So overall, I think in a lot of ways, if you're a veteran painter or an above average painter, not starting out on the tabletop, you're going to notice that, hey, these are great and you might use them, but there's a time and a place for everything. And like I said, they're a great substitute for glazes. I think that's what they're going to be used for the most by the veteran and the expert hobbyist. But going forward, I just don't see the time spent on something like this to go back and clean it up. I feel like I could have spent my time better, like I said, doing it the other way that I did, you know, a few years ago to make that army. The product itself, I feel like is solid and it's great, but it has its limitations, and it also has some very, very good practical applications as well. So it's another one of those tools, I feel like, for your hobby box, for your hobby paint chest, that you can get, that you'll use every now and then, and you know, you might not run out because there's 18 milliliters in this daggone pot right here. So that's about it for this one. I hope I touched on as much in as broad range of subjects as I could. Also, here is the one, my test figure, that's a little bit darker, that I used with the Army Painter Skeleton Bone. As you can see, it definitely turned out darker, so keep that in mind with your primer status right there. And again, you know, watch your glip glops, watch your Klingons, because up there it's the same color, and it didn't turn out as well because I just glopped it on and it didn't look as good. So just keep that in mind. The green I glopped on a little bit better, more too. So there's definitely a technique to using this, but then again, if you're just starting out and you're doing something like this, there's nothing wrong with that either. So keep all of these things in mind as you use Citadel color system and contrast as well. So that's it for this one. Thank you very much for watching my very first impression and painting miniature of the Citadel Contrast. I think, like I said, it's a great product, but it definitely has its limitations and its very, very, very practical applications as well. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can be the very first to like and comment on all our videos.